So one of the reasons why frequency works so well is because it works in alignment with the sort of universal creation cycle. There is a process of how the universe creates things, how it creates matter, how it potentially creates everything in the universe. And when we work with frequency, we're actually working with that universal creation process. And there's three key things to this creation process before we actually get to matter itself, subatomic particles, atomic particles, and then, of course, matter itself. And these three key things help create all of those, all of the matter we see in the universe. And it goes like this. The first one is vibration. And it's almost like the universe in its, innate intelligence creates a little bit of a, maybe a bump or a wobble or a sort of something that creates a vibration in the universe. That vibration then becomes a frequency. Frequency. And so the vibration then gets transferred into a frequency, and that frequency then creates geometry. And it's the geometry that actually creates the start of matter itself. So the geometry is actually the most sort of important thing because that ends up creating the sort of blueprint for the for matter itself to follow. So if we look at the sort of flow and this, universal creation process, we have this wobble, and maybe, that wobble comes from the universal consciousness. There's a little bit of science that's playing out right now, trying to understand that. Panpsychism is one of those aspects that talks about, this eternal sort of consciousness that exists in the universe, and that maybe there is sort of this one particle of consciousness that then creates everything else in the universe. But we have this wobble. I like to think of it as a wobble. The universal innate intelligence consciousness decides it wants to create some stuff, so it first creates a wobble. From that wobble, we then get, this vibration. Vibration. And from the vibration, we then start to get what we might think of as frequency. And it might not be audible frequency, obviously, but it creates this beautiful sort of frequency. Because the wobble is just, an oscillation, right? And that oscillation then creates a frequency. And then we have this sort of centerpiece from what I call the nano subtle energetic system into the more atomic physical sort of quantum system. And that midpoint here is what we might consider as geometry. There are various, that's not very good geometry, is it? There are various forms of geometry that are created, obviously, and that geometry then becomes, so this is the geometry, that geometry then becomes like the blueprint for things like subatomic particles, subatomic and atomic particles to then create matter itself. And it looks exactly like this, that we have a wobble, that wobble creates a vibration, that vibration creates a specific, a specific frequency. Maybe that frequency looks like this. That frequency then creates geometry. And if you've ever seen cymatic patterns in a medium like water, then you'll understand that all frequency creates geometry. That geometry creates a blueprint to sort of direct guide subatomic particles to coalesce together. That then guides atomic particles to come together. That then sort of dictates to some degree what matter then gets formed. So what we end up seeing is this vibration frequency geometry starts to play out. And depending on the what we might think of as the coherence quality of um, that vibration frequency and then geometry will depend on what matter gets formed and how that matter looks. So from a vibration point of view, we end up creating this sort of oscillation, which creates the frequency. That frequency is then it then creates a geometry depending on how harmonic or disharmonic that frequency is. Will determine what type of geometry is then created. So the vibration creates an oscillation, that oscillation creates a frequency. The quality of the harmonics of that frequency will determine what geometry gets formed. And if it's harmonic, we get harmonic geometries and then harmonic matter. And if it's not, then obviously we get the opposite. And then, of course, depending on how stable that geometry is, again determines how matter is formed. So when we start working with frequency, the more sort of specific we can get, specific to the precise frequency of what we're wanting to create or shift or change, the better. So the closer we get to, or the more accurate or the more specific we come, which is probably more important, the more specific we get to that vibration and therefore that frequency, then the more accurate we can be with shifting something, actually changing the sort of atomic structure and then cellular organ system, whatever structure we can get. And then when we layer those frequencies, so when we get to layer them with with various sort of applications like sort of harmonics, then we amplify that frequency to again emphasize the geometry that we're wanting to influence, that then is going to influence sort of matter itself, because this is then going to determine what gets created and how it gets created. Is it in a harmonic, sort of stable fashion, or is it in a disharmonic, destabilized fashion? And often when illness arrives, what's happening is that there is a destabilization in the sort of harmonic frequency layer that's then bumping the geometry, which is then bumping the actual physical system itself. So when we're working with our frequencies, what we're tapping into is a really deep database of specific frequencies that we can access and that we can utilize, this beautiful deep database that we can utilize. Then when we are creating what we call a frequency recipe, by adding things like harmonics, octaves, sort of chords, we get to amplify the frequency. That allows us then to create a really beautiful remedy that we can provide to our clients to literally shift matter itself, to actually shift what's going on at a almost subatomic atomic layer, which then starts to shift at a cellular level, that shifts at a organ level, that shifts at a system level, and then obviously shifts at a whole body level. And this is where frequency is so powerful, because we can be very specific about what we're trying to target and how we're trying to shift not only the vibration, but the frequency, and then, of course, the geometry that holds the blueprint to whatever it is we're trying to, work with, holds the blueprint to a healthy, vibrant, happy human. The blueprint to a vital, healthy cell, for example, and anything that's not in that sort of harmonic, healthy state is creating a disharmony. that disharmonic pattern is shifting, changing the geometry. That's then having a whole body shift and experience for that person. And you know that can then lead to sort of more and more sickness or illness or disease. And this can, you know, affect at the mental, you know, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, dimensional levels. And But when we start to shift and work with this sort of more nano subtle energetic system of frequency and vibration and geometry, then everything starts to shift. And when we can get that fundamental frequency or that specific frequency right on target, then things shift really, really quickly. So, yeah. So if you've liked this video, please remember to subscribe to the channel, share this with colleagues, friends, family, whoever you think might be of, yeah, this might be of interest. And stay tuned for our next frequency advantage, where I explain this at even deeper level and show you exactly how to use frequencies. Yeah, share with you some of the frequency sound bars we do, and it's a whole lot of fun. So check the comments for our next live event coming up really, really soon. All right. Don't forget to breathe. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. Stay in harmony, stay stable, and I will see you really, really soon. Ciao.